Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of the R&R Sports Report. Robert Hagan, along with my good buddy Eric Watkins. Eric, what's up, man?
Well, it's slightly chilly, and this is about the only tolerable fandom I have left, so I had to come prepared.
Not, I don't know if you're chilly, cold front down in your neck of the woods in northern Florida.
Somewhat. Now, to be fair, we had it relatively easy so far this winter. We had a pleasant day that I was getting ready to go golfing last weekend with the January thaw. But the thaw is left, so now things are going back to, well, what they call normal.
Yeah, with you saying that, we've been dealing with it now back here. The last 2 days, we have set record highs for the month of January. So it is Mother Nature has just been crazy, crazy. And I think maybe it's because Mother Nature's been watching NFL football.
I mean, if there were any sort of epitome of chaos and absolute insanity, it's this year's NFL playoffs. And even the weather shows the boot. Look what happened a couple of weeks ago in Kansas City.
Been a crazy environment, and we will get into all of that here in a little bit. Again, welcome back to myself. It's been 3 weeks since I've been on, as Clarkson has been playing at home the last Tuesdays. With that leading in, Randy gone tonight as the Lewiston Bengals are hosting the Coeur d'Alene Vikings. And I did look a few minutes ago, and the Coeur d'Alene Vikings are leading the girls 33 to the Lewiston girls 13 right now. And as 5 seconds left on the clock here at the end of the second. And that is where we are at halftime. Lewiston trails Coeur d'Alene 33 to 13. Clarkson boys also in action, taking on Rogers up at the Spokane Valley at the end of the first, just a couple of minutes ago. All knotted up with Rogers 13 to 13. Rogers is the number 7 2A team in the league. So Clarkson is right back into it after a huge Golden Throne week. We will talk about Golden Throne. Sir, let's talk about you here for a minute. You and Randy, another episode of Bad Brackets came out on Monday. You, Randy, Harry, and I believe Sean Garmer,
Yep.
part of the best video game controllers. So make sure you go check that out. Just search YouTube for Bad Brackets. And are you part of this next week's show?
Yes, with the fast food chains. Don't worry. I've already got some good jokes in hand. I've done my due diligence with all of the pre show prep, and I'm already thinking about his level of rancidness. So, there might be some more obscurity with my picks. If you tune in, you'll see what I mean.
Well, we will. That'll be released on Monday, so make sure you watch that. As I will be a part of it. I'm not sure who our other is. I believe it might be Harry. I
I
think it.
believe so.
I
A-
think it's the
a-
Four Amigos again.
Yeah, or as a certain someone put it, Rancid, Randy, and the three unwise men.
Yeah,
We're
100%.
workshopping it. We're workshopping it. Go ahead, comment on either on our Facebook page or on Bad Brackets. If you got any names that you want us to consider, by all means, let us know.
We're always looking for different names for Randy, and Rancid has just stuck with it. But lots of other things to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Live Golf. We might get to Royal Rumble, just the results of that. Some big news hitting the Major League Baseball wire at the 5 o'clock hour tonight Pacific time. We'll talk about that. Are the Baltimore Orioles sold? We will see here in just
Mm,
a couple minutes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, I know it is tough for you. You, Eric, do not live up here in the local area. So we're going to hit on a couple of local things really fast. I know you were part of this story last week as Randy did talk a little bit about Case Why Not. And
Hmm.
this kid has been unbelievable. And we knew he was 6 points away from breaking the record. He does do so. This past Thursday, as Lapway defeats the Clearwater Valley Rams 99-47. He broke the record at the 7-minute mark, 7:47 in the second quarter on a great pass layup play. From what I understand, Kip had tried to hit a 3-pointer, and Chris Bonney comes down with a rebound and 7 going straight back up. He was able to get it to a cutting Case Why Not, put it up off the backboard. So a great play to get him the record. Broke a record that had been standing for 31 years. And right now he is sitting at 2,613. So he is 387 points away from breaking 3,000. And I'm going to ask you this: for a kid that is averaging just under 40 points a game, 39.2 points a game, he's got 3 regular season games, one of which is tonight, as
Hmm.
Lapway is on the road to Kamiah, where uh, Jared Mercer, who the man that he broke the record was 31 years ago, he is supposed to be at the game to watch him and congratulate him. But does he get the chance with the possibility of 3 playoff games? So we're talking 6 games. He is 387 points. Can he do it and break 3,000 before the end of the season?
It would take some heroic performances, but from everything that I've heard, from what you and Randy have mentioned, it's entirely possible. Because let's break this down. As you mentioned, he's averaging 39.2 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
So, 6 games left. He needs 387. Doing a little bit of quick math, you're talking 64 and a half points per game on average. If he gets some lucky early playoff competition in particular, and maybe the end of the regular season, you could see him putting up 1, 2, maybe even 3 60 to 70 point games. That's reasonable. But to average that over the course of 6 games, and especially a run to a state championship, I think he's just going to fall heartbreakingly short. 2,900, definitely likely. 3,000, I just don't think there's enough time. If there were an extra game or two in there, I would say absolutely. But with it being this close, I want to, but the math doesn't quite math, at least not right now.
So with that being said, on Thursday, he did not play the final 4.5 minutes. And so he only ends up with 29 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists.
Mhm.
And I say only from a guy that's averaging 39 points, but it is going to be a tough one. Yes, as you see, Robert Taylor is here. Thank you. Yes, hello. But you notice I had to fix my name. I want to thank Robert Taylor filling in for me the 2 of the past weeks. You filled in for me last week, but the best Robert is here tonight, not the better Robert and Robert Taylor. We'll talk about your Chiefs here in a little bit, Robert, but finishing that up with what Case is doing as I was looking at numbers, I'm going to throw this one out at you. This one might be a little closer to you. Lyon County, which
Mhm.
is Eddyville, Kentucky.
Okay.
Travis Perry. Travis Perry becomes the 10th player in high school history to reach 5,000 points this last week. He is a signee of the Wildcats of Kentucky. He is the top 100 guard in the nation and had 22 points in his loss last week. But if he maintains his 29.4 points, he's going to end up and they've got 8 games left. He'll end up with approximately 5,200 points going into his end of his career, and that would be great for 7th place overall in the nation. But
Wow.
you know, you
Ah,
look at that's
here,
crazy.
here's the but. But again, for someone to, especially with high school basketball, especially in your basketball crazy states like a Kentucky, like Indiana, like a few others, to be that prolific and to potentially crack the top 10 all time, impressive feat in of itself. But I'm a little bit wary. Fantastic high school career, without a doubt, going to where powerhouse, a blue blood, staying at home in Kentucky. You gotta wonder, are the lights gonna be a little extra bright for him?
Mhm.
And can he make that leap? You initially want to say yes, but especially those freshman nerves, first few games of that freshman season, I'm going to keep my eye out on that to say, okay, can he maintain the composure just like he has in his high school career?
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to watch this kid. I even looked him up, found him on Max Preps, and just following what he has done in his career. Kentucky is going to get a great guard with this kid, and I would be very shocked if he is not a starter his freshman year for the Wildcats. So we will see with that. Before we jump into NFC stuff, NFL stuff. This past week here at in the Valley where we're at was Golden Throne Week, the busiest week for us the year. It had a lot of things going on. The Clarkson Bam basketball team hosted in West Valley this past week on Tuesday prior to those games, where Kendall Wallace comes away with her award. She had broke 1,000 points in her career, and we honored her last Tuesday during Golden Throne Week. So great picture of her. I did share that little story on the R&R Sports Report. Make sure you go and check that out. But it was Golden Throne Week, and it started on Wednesday with the Golden Plunger. And with that being said, Lewiston kind of just came out and ran away with it, and the huge win there, 53-24. Cuthbert out of Lewiston ends up breaking a record in high school record worth 10 takedowns during his match before he finally got the pin in the
Wow.
second quarter. I think he was just kind of playing a game with his guy, but unbelievable athlete there, and a great turnout for that Golden Plunger night. And as far as the main games, it was kind of how the way Randy and I called it up. The Golden Throne, the girls knocked off Lewiston 66-37. Clarkston led by 9 at the half, 28-19. And then coming away, Clarkson set a new 3-point record, hitting 12 threes in that game, which is a new record for the Golden Throne. Tied the overall record in 2014 and then broke it with the new record. Kendall Wallace led all scorers with 15. Jalen McCormick Marks, the transfer from Lapway, had 12, and Eloise Teasley with 11. Addis McArcher and Reese DeGroot both with 9 points for the Bengals in that one. And then we feared what was going to happen. The Lewiston boys just barely moved ahead of Clarkson 57-47. And it was behind the shooting of the young Lewiston guard, Royce Fisher. 12 of his 15 points came from the 3-point line, and just doing unbelievable. Rylan Gomez, 12 points. And then for the Bantams leading the way was Xander Van Tyne with 17 and Ian Moore with 10. So the basketball game split, but going away to what everything matters for this game is all about the Golden Throne, who wins the Spirit Award, and that this year goes to the Lewiston Bengals. So they pick up the Golden Throne there. Real quick, like I said just a couple of minutes ago, Lewiston hosting in Coeur d'Alene tonight as Randy is there calling that game. Girls were leading by 20 at halftime, and I noticed they are just underway. They haven't put a score back up yet. We'll keep you posted with that one. And then Clarkson on the road in Spokane Valley taking on Rogers. And they were down 29-26 for the boys game. We'll keep you posted with all of those scores and highlights. All right, sir. Let's do this. Let's talk about the NFL. We said it a minute ago. It has been so crazy with what Mother Nature has thrown us. The games have been a little all over the place. We've got people getting angry where they have their kicking stuff up to having referee issues again. Let's start first with what I think was a great game on the evening game. San Francisco ends up knocking off Detroit 34-31. Let's throw out a few numbers at you and then get some feedback from you. Brock Purdy is still looking quite well. First time ever in any playoff game where you had the number one pick go against the last pick of a draft. Brock Purdy, 267 yards, a touchdown, one interception, 48 yards. Christian McCaffrey, again, 20 carries, 90 yards, two touchdowns. Deebo Samuel, 89 yards. Ayuk, 68. And I'm going to bring up some other stats with these games too, because once we get to the Baltimore game, that is when this shift right here is going to change majorly. San Francisco rushed the ball 33 times for 155 yards. Detroit rushed the ball 29 times, 182 yards. Jared Goff looked great, 25 of 41, 273 yards, no interceptions. But the two-headed monster between David Montgomery with 93 yards and a touchdown, Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries, 45 yards and a touchdown. San Francisco, we all picked to win this game, but I don't think Detroit is going anywhere for a while.
Now, this is something to when I looked at the game and I looked at the second half in particular, I noticed. Dan Campbell has really proven himself on this stage. He has really proven himself with this team. He has his identity. He's going to go for it, and he's going to be aggressive. In the regular season, that works perfectly. Won them the division, really going away. Early on in the playoffs, in a wild card game against the Rams, it worked. Dubious, but it worked. And it worked again against the Buccaneers. But you have to get to a point to where over-aggression isn't always the best. And I hope that Dan Campbell's really learned this lesson. Don't change too much, but really be smart about it. And that's the key thing. And I say that because he said post-game to the players in the locker room, this may have been our only shot. As unfortunate as it is, I am inclined to agree, and here's why. It's not so much that Detroit is going to get worse. They're not. They're going to retool. They've got a lot in place. They're going to make some changes, get rid of the last of the old guard, but they're going to be a consistent force. But here's the problem. We've seen how Green Bay has escalated in the North. They're not going anywhere. The Vikings, especially if they pay Kirk Cousins what he wants, which I don't think they should, but if they can keep everything together, they're going to be hovering around. Then Chicago, big question mark. If they can finish the rebuild around Fields, they could be a force. If they get Caleb Williams or someone else in the draft, that could potentially be a force. The division is only going to get tougher. The conference may not, because you still have your contenders like San Francisco. LA might be a bit middling. Whoever comes out of the NFC East, you have to worry about. The NFC South isn't going to be solidified. So you have opportunities to consistently get back to the playoffs, win playoff games. But getting back to the NFC Championship and another crack at a Super Bowl could potentially be just that extra bit tougher from here on out. It's going to be interesting to see what the next, not just year, but 2 or 3 years translates to. Because if they can have that sort of a window and get back again, that sets them up for the next decade. But if they don't, then there's still going to be those lingering questions.
I think you hit it on the head. It's not what Detroit is or what it has. They're going to have a couple pieces. We're not sure if they re-sign, if they're going to move on. But you hit it. Jordan Love proved himself over the last 8 games that he played in that he has taken the steps to the next level, and what he does in that division is going to really do. What do they do with Aaron Jones? What does that ball club do? You said it with Minnesota. I love having probably the best receiver there, but
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Cousins, I don't see him there past another year, if that. And a lot of us probably disagree on what should happen in Chicago. For me, I don't think Caleb Williams go there. I think if Chicago was smart, they go receiver there and they try to find a weapon for Justin Fields. But we're just, part of the whole talking heads. We do not
Mm-hmm.
know what's in that whole idea of the Chicago camp, but you said it right away. I mean, it's what happens with those ball clubs. But as far as back to the game, Dan Campbell, highly impressed with what he has done all year. But
Absolutely.
you cannot go into a playoff game and score 0 points in the third quarter when you've already put up 24 in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Stick with what has got you there. The two-headed monster between Jahmyr Gibbs and also David Montgomery, along with the passing to Amon-Ra St. Brown, there should have been no, and Laporta. Let's not forget Dan Laporta, 97 yards with this cat. He has been a staple in this offense. Why did we get away from that?
And this was part of my things. You go with how you win. If you've got a team that's a little bit weaker against the run, and I saw early on with that Dre Greenlaw injury, I knew that was going to be a big miss for San Francisco's defense, even though we're with returns and what have you, it wasn't going to be the same. You go ahead, use, as you say, that two-headed monster, pound the rock. If you have a team like that isn't the best against the run, having to respect the run, you're not going to get 7, 8 guys in the box. You're going to get your front 4, 6 in the box, easy running lanes. Then, as they go ahead and try to start focusing on the run, now you have single coverage with Williams, single coverage with St. Brown, single coverage with Laporta, sending him on shorter and intermediate routes. Work the clock, keep going, kick a field goal every once in a while, apply the pressure. Because even though you weren't entirely effective at getting to Brock Purdy, he put up good numbers, especially in the second half. If you make it to where Shanahan's got to get past happy, we've seen when Shanahan has to get past happy, things collapse just as quickly.
Yeah, 100%. Because the defense kind of looked a little flat coming out of halftime, and when you give an offense like Christian McCaffrey the
Mm-hmm.
chance to run rampant in the third quarter and give up 17 points to tie up the ball game, it's just if you're gonna shut them down, you got to shut them down. Stay with it. Stay with the same
Absolutely.
plan. And it just seemed like they shifted off a little bit, but we knew that San Francisco was going to be tough. We picked them at the
Mm-hmm.
very beginning of the year, and those things just kind of added up to they were the stronger team. Now we'll talk a little bit about where this team goes a little bit farther, but after we talk about the AFC game, but I. I'm scared. I mean, if I'm Kansas City, I would be a little worried about what they could do. Defensive wise, I'm a little worried that Detroit was able to run all over Warner and that defense of San Francisco. So things look a little bleak. I think it's going to be a little bit more even than what we thought. We'll talk a little bit about the
Of
line
course.
here in a few minutes. But with that being said, let's talk about that AFC game.
Yeah, we have to discuss the
And
elephant in the room in your case.
and the thing about it is, and Robert Taylor, and I was very cordial. I did not talk about to him anything bad about his team. The team played great. But let's talk about some stats. We're going to throw out the stats before I get the angry side of me and I talk about what happened in this game. Patrick Mahomes, 241 yards, okay. Touchdown, 15 yards rushing. The bigger part, how about Travis Kelce and what that guy did? 11 receptions on 11 targets, 1 catch, an unbelievable layout on a Patrick Mahomes chuck it up to get there kind of catch. Isaiah Pacheco, 68 yards, 24 carries. But another key I'm going to throw out there, Kansas City rushed the ball 32 times for just 89 yards. Now, for Baltimore, Lamar put on another decent game. Wasn't as just overthrowing a few passes like that. But as far as running the ball, throwing the ball, it's about where we figured it was going to be. About 250. He was at 272. 20 throws for 272, a touchdown, an interception. Again, 8 carries, 54 yards. Here's where, and then you get Zay Flowers with five receptions, 115. Here is where I get angry about this. Gus Edwards, 3 rushes, 20 yards. Justice Hill, 3 carries, 3 yards. Zay Flowers, 2 carries, 4 yards. When you're the number 1 rushing team in the entire NFL all season long, and you only rush the ball 16 times for 81 yards, you led the league in average how many times you carried the ball. You ran the ball 32 times during the season on a regular per game. You averaged 156 yards per game. And you only run the ball 17 times or it's 16 times and have half the yards and half the carries. That's what got you there, besides the defense. Now, with that being said, yes, there was all kinds of things. 5 personal fouls, 4 of which that were stupidly done by Vanoy. Roquan Smith getting a little too crazy on trying to stop the clock and reset things. 3 turnovers, 2 of which in the red zone. Baltimore shot themselves in the foot. They are the ones that lost it. It wasn't Kansas City, the better team. It was the team shot themselves in the foot, giving Kansas City the way just to run. I think that entire game for me revolved around what Kelce did to set the tempo in the first half.
And I want to go back to Robert Taylor's last comment. The spirit of Hank Stram, he had it perfectly. They matriculated the ball down the field with total ease twice. Harbaugh and everyone panicked. They did. And going back to some of those stats that you mentioned, in the regular season, on average, 32 carries, 156 yards. Almost bang on 5 yards a carry. What they did during that game, 16 carries for 81 yards, just over 5 yards a carry. Harbaugh got scared, wanted to get cute, and this is exactly what happens. If you go ahead, keep that pace, because as we say all the time, what do you do to stop Mahomes? Keep the ball out of his hands. You run the ball, grind the clock, keep it out of his hands. and you keep the pressure off of Lamar. We saw Lamar on those last drive, the last couple of drives. Everything started to set in. And with the fact that the Chiefs and everything that they did pregame, they said, we're not afraid of you. And they weren't. They were playing with house money and with the narratives. This is exactly what happened. They were like, hey, we're inevitable. We're here. Come through us. Eventually, they just couldn't.
Now I'm gonna throw this back up here really quick. I agree with Robert a bit. Better prepared, I think a little bit. I think what happened is Todd Monken, from Georgia, didn't trust himself to stay with the same thing because they were worried about Kansas City scheming on that and taking the runaway. But when you've got a downhill runner like Justice Hill, like Gus Edwards, you got to be pounding the ball. You're going to get Zay. You're going to get Mark Andrews. But when you go away from the bread and butter that got you to that point, it makes zero sense.
Yeah, and with being better prepared and on the road, yes, the better team, were they the better team that week? You could argue. But throughout the season, not really. The 18th ranked run defense and the 4th ranked pass defense. Yes, their secondary is one of the best in the league. I'm not going to say otherwise. But if you have a team that, by those metrics, is pretty mid against the run, you go and run. Make them stop it. While you're going to go ahead and get some stops, some tackles for loss, what have you. You're going to get your chunk plays. Then, it's like, if you get those chunk plays, they're going to have to be more aggressive sometimes. And with Steve Spagnuolo loving his blitz, okay, you can be in better situations to throw against the blitz if you have the run defense softened up.
Yeah, and you said it, Spags went almost half the time blitzing the entire night. You look at that, and you said it, possession 37 minutes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Baltimore holds the ball for 22 minutes. You start the game a 3 and out. You start series number 2, 3 and out. You're not going to win games. And if you're going to get kind of cute, what I think Monken was trying to do, throw the ball, keep these guys off their toes, it just did not work. But again, penalties, 5 personal foul penalties. One by Vanoy just irritates me even more. I mean, you're already listening to Travis Kelce chirp at you. He's going to do that. He is a great player. He's going to get in your mind. If you're a good player, that's what you're doing to rouse up your defense. Vanoy needed to just take a step back. He did. I mean, and that's what kills him. The other, Zay Flowers, I talked with a student today at school and we talked about it. He's like, it didn't make any sense. Why is Zay trying to stretch out when you've got the first down? Just fall down and don't try to stretch it. Yes, we know you want the touchdown, but you got to do what's best for the team in this in that predicament. And they did. They just beat themselves in the foot. Now, I agree with this now, I think Spags is going to dial it up even more against Brock Purdy. Find out how much he is going to be able to do against that San Francisco offense, and I think that happens 100%. And it's just part of the game of where we're going to go and what's going to happen. So,
and this is going to be interesting. Knowing Shanahan, knowing the previous demons, knowing 4 years ago, is he going to do the same things that we saw Dan Campbell and John Harbaugh do this past Sunday? Knowing that there were still almost 2 weeks out. We're just now getting through Pro Bowl week as it is, which I'm actually going to be excited again to tune in this year. But knowing the narratives, knowing everything else, and I'm going to say this right now, as I said before these games, Kansas City, the narratives, either way, they really can't lose. They win, that's another ring and another Super Bowl appearance, beginning to cement Mahomes' legacy as a GOAT status, and the Chiefs replacing the Patriots as the AFC dynasty. If they lose, hey, they still got there. They're set up to be contenders again without a doubt next year. With San Francisco, if they win, it's finally the wave of relief. They finally got the big one. They finally got over the hump. But if they lose, that's another L in another key game, another year without a trophy, another year without a promise that was fulfilled. Then what?
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
agree.
saying, yeah, with this comment right here, completely agree. The scheming offensively, in particular, that Andy Reid does, I would trust him more than Kyle Shanahan in these situations, especially you give him an extra week, maybe an extra cheeseburger. Watch out. Watch out.
And that's the big thing. I mean, it's there's so much hype between these games and what these teams are. Now, with that being said, were these four teams probably the best four teams that were left? I would highly argue yes. I think these were probably even going into the playoffs uh, with the few upsets we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, they played an unbelievable season. I think this was probably the best group of teams to be in the playoffs in a long time.
Absolutely. This year, the playoffs shook out about the best that you could possibly get, especially if you look at the last half, even the last third of the season. You knew if you could go ahead with these teams and these runs, you could pretty much pick who were going to win these games and how it would shake out. And it turned out that way. And no, Taylor, if the man gets that excited in the locker room and says cheeseburgers for everyone, that doesn't count as fat shaming. Granted,
Well, we
I
got
love myself a good cheeseburger too. So what does that say about me?
we have to say this. Let's throw another plug for Randy and our and the best fast food chain. I would love to know what Andy Reid thinks his best fast food chain is. So, do you think he's an In-N-Out Burger fan or
I would think he's
Burger
more
King?
in and out than maybe Whataburger. I think Burger King would probably be third for him, if I'm being honest. But
Yeah,
if the gear fits, wear it.
I 100%. So let's talk about what we think really quick. Early, like you said, we're still 2 weeks out now, counting
Mm-hmm.
down the days. We're
Mm-hmm.
12 days from this, but there's already some big news coming out of what is going to happen in this ball game. First, San Francisco. I'm always looking at lines. I'm a betting
Yep.
guy. We look at that
Same here.
right now. We're early as of this afternoon. Right now, currently, San Francisco just a 2-point favorite in this one. So yes, Kansas City still has the dog mentality. Do you think that spread widens any bit or shortens? And then also, right now over under is 47.5. So are we looking at a 27-20, 27-21 game or something like that?
Given how Kansas City has performed in recent Super Bowls, I'm much more confident about the total staying where it is. If I had to guess, the closing point would be closer to 48 and a half, more than that. And Robert Taylor brings up a good point. The early lines, opening lines, fresh out, some books had right at that key number, Niners -3. Others had Niners -2.5. Immediately from that 2.5 point line, money came in on the Chiefs thick and fast. That line by the end of the night moved a point by itself. So to now see it move back a half point from 1.5 to 2, this is going to be one of those games to where sharps are really going to wait until late. So if we're saying coming this weekend, you're not going to see too much movement. It'll probably stay around 2. However, if we go few days closer to the game, Wednesday, Thursday, as things settle down, you're going to have some sharp money back on Kansas City. It might end up Niners -1, maybe 1.5. But from where I'm standing, that's probably, barring any other significant news, where I think it settles. And that's going to be perfect for the Chiefs.
Now, with that being said, we look at it, Kansas City knocked off Buffalo. Buffalo ended up being the 2.5 point favorite in that one. And then in the wild card round, the Dolphins in that game was as I'm waiting for that to load up, was a 4.5 point favorite. So not as much as what it was at certain times by the time the game started. So I'm kind of like you. We get there on Thursday. We really see what happens. Now, I do see this, and I think this is going to be a big one because I was just getting ready to bring this up, and Robert Taylor right on top of it is what does Kansas City do now with defensive end Charles Omenihu has the ACL injury? Who fills that role, and where does this team go to try to solve that? Because he had a sack, I want to say 3 plays prior, one of the 4 sacks that happened against Lamar.
And this is going to be to where extra reliance, but I doubt not over reliance on someone like Chris Jones. He has proven with the kind of season that he's had, he really wants to step up and be an anchor for that front 4. And, well, as Taylor mentioned with the strip sack, when you have someone like that who can be another anchor, it's not going to be that terrible. But what I see Spags doing, going a little more exotic, maybe some wide 9 techniques, maybe bringing another linebacker up, some coverage disguises to kind of mask things along that side. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a few more interesting pressures from different disguised defenses to make up that. But again, along that front 4, to me, Chris Jones, we saw him celebrate week 18, getting his payday bonus. I think he's going to be hunting down another one.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, Spags went and pressured 50% of the time with them. You look at the depth chart for these guys, and Robert can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got on that outside behind who Omenihu was Jordan Smith, B.J. Thomas, and Mike Dana. So do they mix and match with those 3 a little bit more? Do they give the bulk of it to Jordan Smith, or what do they do? But what happens with Willie Gay? I mean, it's going to be very interesting with this whole thing, and Robert thinks that Dana gets the step up, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. And that's another thing. Now that one down, he'll be stepping up in that position. Probably going to see some extra rotations. So, how those different fronts, and that's going to be more beneficial for Kansas City, how those different rotations are going to look from Brock Purdy's eyes, where everything is coming from, gives them a better chance to really have different looks than they used so far during the season. So maybe a blessing in disguise. Maybe.
Yeah, in the big thing, and Robert kind of brings it up, there with changing the look of what Shanahan does in that one, with Greenlaw, Fred Warner. Fred was again not. I don't think he played a huge role as much in this last game, but I think if he wants to hold things very, very close, he's got to do a little bit better in this game as Fred Warner, and he's going to have his hands full if they do not spy on uh, Travis Kelsey. I mean, what Kelsey was able to do to set the tempo of that game, it is going to be a tough task for San Francisco. And I've already seen a couple people saying I'm taking Kansas City to upset because they have just gotten hot. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
turned out that way. And how do you ever go against, like Robert said earlier, how do you ever go against a man that has been so dominant in the coaching tree in Andy Reid and what he has produced as far as not just players but as coaches that have coached for him.
Yeah, and for a man who has led his teams to now a combined 11 conference championship games, and this will now be yet another Super Bowl to add to it. As Robert Taylor mentioned, it was a particularly hard road this year. I really can't agree with just the one home game and with all the narratives, the teams they had to play, all the demons and everything else. Yes, they had to grind to get there. They're in the best position. And you mentioned about having a spy on Kelsey. You're going to really have to choose. Do you spy Kelsey, watch him to try to not beat you, or do you spy Rice, someone else who can find gaps in the defense, has deceptive levels of speed, but can, like Isaiah Pacheco, if you're in his way and he's got the ball after he's caught it, he doesn't mind getting in there, lowering his helmet, or just throwing you down. So there's going to have to be a lot of huge decisions. And for as much as they play that cover three zone, do you even risk going towards more man? Do you risk going more towards nickel or those kind of formations? How you affect your down linemen? There's no concrete answers. That would scare me if I'm a DC in this team.
Right. Well, and you said it just a second ago, and I'm gonna kind of lean away from this storyline. It's because I feel it was just a storyline. If you are a quarterback in this league, you should be able to go anywhere and win. So as
Mm-hmm.
far as Patrick Mahomes having to play outside of uh, Arrowhead Stadium, so be it. You need to. You have to. And I think they
Mm-hmm.
played into that a little bit too much. Now, with that being said, Rice has been able to become that new favorite guy that Patrick Mahomes needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a huge thing. It wasn't just the throwing between uh him and Kelsey and yes, early in the season it was all about Patrick Mahomes is really, really missing Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
That was it from a year before. Now this other storyline came up of okay, Patrick has never played outside of Arrowhead Stadium in the playoffs. Hey, if you're an NFL quarterback and you're getting paid the money you do, and you are an MVP of the NFL, you should be able to play anywhere, whether the storyline says it or not.
Of course. And that's the whole thing. Anywhere with any team in any conditions. And one sneaky thing I noticed, and I'm glad that the Chiefs did, was a little bit of a secret addition by subtraction. Because early on, as you mentioned, everything was about Kelsey and how you had the lack of receiving core. Then Rice emerged. But what they did for everything they mentioned, breaking the record, Brady and Gronk, most touchdowns in the playoffs by a QB receiver duo, done. Travis Kelsey breaking Jerry Rice's record for most catches in the playoffs, done. The fact that they noticed immediately and everything with Kadarius Toney, and the fact that he's been inactive for these last few games, they're saying, look, we don't need you. You come and you cost us more than you helped us. We don't mind. We can go and get someone else. Everybody's noticed and said, hey, this could be us too. We have to step up, help out. But enough of a change in MDS actually making the catch to cement the game, along with Rice, along with all this. So now, even though it's not the vaunted receiving core of years past with the Chiefs, they still got their weapons, and they've still got people who know that they can be weapons, which makes it even scarier knowing that they have ways that they can retool, reload come the offseason, no matter what happens in Vegas.
You hit on that just a second ago, and with everything that is going down with Kadarius Toney, do you think he gets any time, or is he going to be another healthy scratch?
He's going to be another healthy scratch. If they've shown that his something going on behind the scenes, I don't know if it's practice, if it's attitude, something is not working. And if it hasn't worked by now, it's not going to. And I also wonder about Mecole Hardman. Is he yet another healthy scratch? I don't know if they can afford to or not, given the depth chart, but if they figure, hey, we can play without you too, he just might be watching from the sidelines the whole game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that group, especially Toney. And I'm probably like you, and I would probably agree with Robert Taylor. I would think that Toney would be gone after this season is over. Where he ends up, could he find himself looking for a job at week 1 of the NFL season? That is a big clue for me, because who wants to take a chance on a guy that, had struggled so much? But anything's possible. Maybe he could be a weapon, for like a Justin Fields that needs a receiver. Lots could be said about this guy and what he does. Your reaction a little bit about Travis Kelce and him surpassing Jerry Rice. It seemed like it was no big deal for him to pass the greatest receiver of all times in receptions of the playoffs.
When you have someone who's on any sort of GOAT level like Jerry Rice is, you break one of his records that are thought to be unbreakable or at least close. To me, that was a significant deal. I didn't even realize it, but I was like, wow, that just shows the kind of status and the kind of playoff career he's had to be that clutch and to be a top level, not just tight end, but receiver, period, like he has been for the Chiefs in the Mahomes era. And with something like this, add in the rings and everything else, this cements his legacy. And when he finally tells everybody they have the fight for the right to party for the last time, Canton's going to be waiting. Canton's going to be calling. He's going to be getting that knock on the door in the hotel room 5 years later saying, hey, let's go measure your bust. And the more that he goes on with this alone, closer he gets to that first ballot.
With that being said, you hit on it just a second ago, and Patrick Mahomes, I think we could all, if he comes away with this win, and you look at this 7 years career, he's making his 5th Super Bowl appearance, 4 wins. If he wins this game, is he by far the best? Yeah, by far, I think he ends up being a number 1 first ballot Hall of Famer. But if he comes away with a win here, do you put him above what Tom Brady's doing or has done or done?
The only reason why I'm going to say no is because how long Brady was able to do it for and under the variety of circumstances. Because Tom Brady basically had 2 or 3 different careers in one. The early success coming out of nowhere against all the expectations, then going through that long stretch of not being able to win the big one, then coming back, the redemption arc and everything, and then closing it out with his time in Tampa Bay, getting another ring, cementing in that whole relationship between Brady, Belichick, and the Patriots. Mahomes will be on his way there, closer with the win, but I would still have to see at the end of the day. He'll have a hotter start, but how does the second half of his career go? And if he comes close to what Tom Brady did in a few fewer years, say if he only plays another 7, 8 years, give him 15, and he does the same or maybe just a little bit short, yeah, I would give him the nod over Brady then.
Yeah, you said it, and I think the big one about that, and me saying that to you and asking you, is his start. We're talking
Mm-hmm.
about 5 of 7. You're
Mm-hmm.
in the Super Bowl. You look at what Tom Brady did, in all of his career. So many years in New England, 20 years in New England, 3 years in Tampa Bay, and how many appearances and things. Like you said, it is stretched out, but where this is so compacted,
Yep.
it just feels so much like he's so much better. But
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, what happens over the next few years? How do
Yeah.
they keep people in front to protect him? Does he keep the targets as of Kelsey, who is getting up there in age? Uh, with Rice, does Rice turn in to a major number one receiver for that ball club?
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to note, especially with this being compacted, he's been to 6 conference championship games in a row already. And I noted this when I read the article. The record is 8. By who else? Tom Brady and the Patriots. If he can match that record to start his career or even beat it, and then come away out of that next 3 with maybe another ring or at least a Super Bowl appearance, that changes the conversation significantly in his favor. And he would have to do less in the back half of his career to try to keep that momentum. But he can keep going like that now. There's going to be more talk, as well as there should be.
Right. Randy just messaged me a second ago. Not to change off for a second, we'll get to one more big topic in the coaching industry side of this in the NFL. Lewiston had a running clock the last quarter of that ball game and the girls' game, and Lewiston falls to Coeur d'Alene 64-28. Looking over at the stream right now, it looks like they are getting ready to announce the starters for the boys' game. So hopefully we will keep up with the clock there. Clarkston right now was down 11 after the third, 45-34. And according to our buddy Brian Bremling, it's really struggling with easy layup shots for Clarkston tonight. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about early scenarios for the Super Bowl of who's getting there, who's not. So with that being said, let's talk for these teams that did not play. Let's talk about Baltimore first off. Yes, I think this is a learning curve for Monken. do the things you did during the regular season to get you to the dance. Run the ball, and when you don't run the ball, half of it, it's great. Do so with what Lamar did this year. Granted, yes, got paid. He rushed. He is probably the leading candidate for MVP. Does this prove that Baltimore is going to be that team that is it possible again for Patrick Mahomes to have to come into Baltimore to make your way into the Super Bowl again next year?
It's entirely possible. Just like I made the argument against the Lions because of the division, I'm going to make the argument for your Ravens because of your division. Cleveland, they thought they had the answer in Deshaun Watson. Your defense, some of your stars are getting up there. You still started 5 different quarterbacks. Cleveland is still Cleveland. They may not be a bunch of elves, but you're relying on the eliteness of what's Joe Flacco, and you see how far that got you. You shouldn't be terribly worried. Pittsburgh, the black cloud that surrounds Tomlin going into, for the first time ever, the last year of his contract. How much are they really going to put up with and tolerate? Do they have everything with Kenny Pickett, with their receivers, their issues? Is it going to be another 9-10 win season? Will that still be enough? If it is, I wouldn't be that worried. The only competition is really Cincinnati. And we've seen all of that relies on Burrow. And Joe Burrow, as much as I like him, as much as he's another guy who's had a hot start to his career, the injuries may be starting to pile up a bit too much, a bit too soon. And if we're not careful with Cincinnati, Burrow's going to be one of those guys that could end up saying, what could have been? So
Would that
for
be
Baltimore, it's on a platter for them. It is.
Yeah. With that being said, we say Baltimore now. Let's turn attention to Detroit for 1 second. Big news today with that one that kind of leads into some stuff. Ben Johnson turns down some head coaching things, had been interviewed, a few of them. He stays on as offensive coordinator at Detroit. Does he and Dan Campbell have a plan going in to the 2024 season?
Absolutely. I think this is the best thing to keep that continuity. And the fact that he turned down a head coaching jobs, that shows how he feels about the head coaching jobs that are out there. Some of them were still okay, but could have been beneficial for him. But he says, hey, I want to be here to keep us in a position to where that wasn't our only shot. Go ahead, talk with Campbell, talk with the Fords of the front office, say, hey, this is what we need. This is what we got to do. We can win again. And that to me is going to be a huge statement. And if the players continue to buy in like they already have, that's tremendous. Tremendous for Detroit. Gives them a huge advantage.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. So that was our lead in. Going into this next part, there has been so many moves, and it always happens the day after we have the R&R Sports Report. But lots of moves today. But let's talk about some of the bigger ones that happened earlier in the week. By far, probably the biggest one. Jim Harbaugh makes his way back into the NFL and leaves Michigan and a national championship there to come and become the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And it's been noted, sir, he is a huge Justin Herbert fan. He is a great quarterback. He was an above average quarterback when he was in the NFL. Does Harbaugh really, really help out Herbert? And can the Chargers get to the next level?
Does he help out Herbert? Absolutely. This is a guy, we saw what he did in the NFL with Colin Kaepernick. We know what he can do with his teams as quarterback. Even elevated J.J. McCarthy to his status and what he could do in the draft. Does it help the Chargers? The Chargers can't afford to do what the Niners did. They had something great with Harbaugh. They had a Super Bowl appearance and had something special. He was helping to build that team and got them back to the glory that they have now under Shanahan. But there were clashes. Dean Spanos, you were already persona non grata among large swaths of NFL fan bases. Let's get that out and out. If he decides, look, I'm going to get out of the way. Jim, this is between you and the GM. Whatever happens, happens. Y'all figure it out. If they can make some music that way, the Chargers are going to be serious competition. That'll be cemented if they beat the Chiefs, especially in the playoffs. But this is going to start building in that better position to do so.
With that other being said, another big move happened last week, and then today with them signing the OC, Atlanta has figured things out. They hire Raheem Morris, and then today they signed their offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. Is this? I don't know if this one to me doesn't feel like the right fit. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Maybe this is a hope of, does Desmond Ridder get better? Does Bijan Robinson play better for a different coach in Raheem Morris?
You have to have a coach that recognizes who to run the offense through. That was previously not the case in Atlanta. You have a talented running back. You have a talented wide receiver, like tight end. You have Robinson. You have Drake London. You have Kyle Pitts. I don't think Ridder is the answer. I think they're going to be searching for another quarterback. And with a guy like Raheem Morris, who leans more to the defensive side, and their defense was fine, that helps and solidify what you need. But I think with the offensive coordinator, that will help and say, hey, someone who's competent and knows what they're doing. Now, granted, I don't think it's the best move overall, but I think it's a move that can work considering the current dregs of the NFC South. But Arthur Blank, who really has got to have some deep conversations, especially within himself, because the way that he's running this team, it's another one of those situations to where you can't just rely on what little success you had in the past. The game has changed. The business has changed. Are you going to change with it? This ain't Home Depot. It's not.
Here's one that for me this move speaks volumes, and we knew it was going to happen. Randy and I talked about this Sunday with this change in LA. Kellen Moore leaves LA to go to Philly and join up with Vic Fangio and Nick Sirianni. Is this Philadelphia team now making moves to get back to the top of the NFC East?
They're going to try to. And with the way the NFC is operated, I think if anybody, not Dallas, to continue the chain of no repeat champions wins, it will be them. But long term, I don't see this working. There's a reason why this is Kellen Moore's third different stop just in the past few years. Yes, he's got better talent, but he had good levels of talent in Dallas, and look what happened. I'd be a little bit worried, and I think Sirianni's seat is going to get a little bit hotter if certain things don't happen throughout this coming season.
So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, and just because this Boise State quarterback, offensive coordinator, you play under the microscope of Jerry's world, of Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy. You know, how much of that was he was successful for a few years until Mike McCarthy kept wanting to get his hands on everything. And the only reason I think why he's out of LA is just because of the changes that Harbaugh's going to bring his own thing. I think pairing him up with a Vic Fangio, and you have two dominant forces in the coordinator positions, I think it's going to help Sirianni, but Sirianni's going to be on the hot seat. He has to be on the hot seat for what that ball club has done over the past couple of years.
Yeah, they went ahead. Everybody was calling for Sirianni's head. Everybody wanted to give him a chance after Shane Steichen left. This is what happened on its face. Yeah, there wasn't too many steps back, but how things developed over the course of the season, you can really see it. That chance is now gone. It's like, okay, we'll give you somebody completely different underneath of you. If we don't get at least a repeat of what happened, then the problem was you. And that's why I with you, as I said, season goes on, and if they're not performing up to those expectations, if they're not getting off to a good start and staying consistent, the temperature is going to go up and up and up. And universe forbid, if there's another late season collapse, he's done. He's out the door. Period.
Gotcha. Here's a couple others. We talked about Atlanta making the move. We knew that Arthur Smith was gone early. Arthur Smith to be hired by Pittsburgh. How do you think that relationship between Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin? To me, I don't think. For me, that's not peanut butter and jelly. That is far from something that I think is going to work.
Burt Bell, Matt Canada, Arthur Smith. They will all have something in common in being the only coaches in the last more than 3/4 of a century to be fired by the Steelers midseason. This will fail, and this will fail fast. And keep in mind with that trio, Burt Bell fired himself. People don't know that.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, I think this is a bad thing for Pittsburgh. If you want to add more smoke and more flame to the fire and more wood to the fire and what's going on with Mike Tomlin, you sure did it, Rooney family. You sure did it by doing this. A couple other offensive coordinator ones. Ken Dorsey, now the new offensive coordinator in Cleveland. You got to deal with Watson again, another quarterback issue. Hopefully they get the run game there. DeMarcus Covington, how about that one? Is the new defensive coordinator in for Gerard Mayo. Trying to get his feet wet.
yeah, unknown quantity, but I think at this point, when you are Robert Kraft, you know that it's going to be a rocky few years and you have the succession plan finally. I think it's like, okay, we know we have someone mostly untested as a head coach, but we're willing to give him time. We're going to go ahead and go all in on this. We're going to see what happens because this is the first time since the early 90s expectations are so low. Kraft is playing into that, and I honestly think these are some good moves. Have some people come in, get these positions, get their feet wet, get this experience. If things go well and they overperform, fantastic. If they don't, you lose nothing. This is fine. So I appreciate this mentality.
A couple other quick ones. Dan Pitcher is new offensive coordinator in Cincinnati after Brian Callahan leaves to become the head coach in Tennessee, which we knew last week. Also, Brad Iddick is going to follow Dave Canales from Tampa Bay into Carolina. It's going to be the OC, but it sounds like Canales is going to call plays, so Iddick will not do so. Also, Eric Washington is the new defensive coordinator in Chicago. This one I'm intrigued a little bit about. Sean McDermott promotes two of his other coaches, Bobby Babich and Joe Brady both being promoted to coordinators in their respective sides. This one intrigues me a little bit.
More so defensively than on offense, because when Ken Dorsey left, when he was shown the door, Brady pretty much said, all right, Josh Allen, you're going to be Josh Allen. That's fine. But you notice how the times when Josh Allen is Josh Allen, it fails. How can Brady, knowing he has the trust of Josh Allen and everybody else in that offense, go ahead and get more of the winning, more of the huge plays and the breaking of containment while limiting the mistakes? Plus, how can you keep Stephon Diggs? That's another thing that we notice. Fewer targets, little bit discontent, little bit of a disconnect there. How is Brady going to mend that relationship? He's got a bit of a task ahead of him. I think he can manage. Defensively, how can you make the best of your depth? Injuries happen. It's been a horrible injury play couple of years for Buffalo, especially defensively. How are you going to step up and say, all right, if this happens, this is our backup plan and we change this approach? If this happens, backup plan, change approach. How can they be sure to not have just a focus on a handful of guys, especially if these injuries continue to happen?
Exactly. Two last ones, one of which another one out to LA. Jim Harbaugh is able to pull away an executive from John Harbaugh as Ravens executive Joe Hortz leaves to be the new GM for with the Chargers. So that one is interesting. And for Robert Taylor, it was quoted and said, Andy Reid plans on being back next year. So with that being said,
Got a good thing going. I mean, why not keep it going?
1000%. You're listening to and watching the R&R Sports Report. Again, good buddy Eric Watkins filling in for Randy, who is has been calling the Lewiston game, as we talked about a few minutes ago. Lewiston girls lost that one. Currently, right now, just underway in the second quarter, the Bengals trail by 10 to the Vikings of Coeur d'Alene, 21-11. All right, here we've talked a ton of NFL. Let's hit a little bit of Major League Baseball. Dude, we're almost there. Maybe it's because my Ravens are out. Now it's time to focus on some other things. But let's talk about the news that hit the wire just right about an hour before the show came up. The Baltimore Orioles to be sold by the Angelos family to David Rubinstein and Mike Arguetti, and is supposedly going down by reports on Tuesday, going down and being sold for $1.725 billion to this Carlyle Groups and Ares Management Corporation. Should we be concerned about a new entity taking over? Now, nothing can happen yet until Major League Baseball approves this, which they meet next week down in your neck of the woods in Orlando.
Yeah, only 2 hours away, not quite the heart of spring training, but my concern is the fact that the meeting's in Orlando. I'm not worried initially, but with the lead up to this, with everything with Camden Yards, with all the stuff with the stadium, reconstruction, and everything else, I'm a bit nervous on the fact that the Angelos did feel it better to sell. Granted, values high. Orioles, in the midst of what could be a bountiful, successful period in their franchise, sell them while they're at their peak. I get that. But with an entity like that, you always wonder, how are they going to maximize their return on investment right away? If they go through the same stuff with the city that the Angelos went through, the Angelos will at least say, hey, we'll wait it out and we'll stick around. This is for the fans. This new group was like, you're looking for relocation, you're looking for investment, you're looking for expansion. Let's sit down and talk. We've got these places. We can make money. We see what the A's are doing. We see what Tampa Bay is potentially doing. If that factors in those owners' minds, and if this new group loves the allure of Orlando and wanting to bring it back to prominence, that's when I would start to worry.
I don't think they're going to be too worried right now, as Baltimore did sign in the end of September a 30-year deal to keep the ball club there. But we all know what happens, and we all know what is supposed to happen. But right now, Camden Yards 30-year deal, or to stay in Baltimore, is kind of a done deal. If you've been there, I loved it. I told the wife, I said, you need to send me back again. I'm ready to go back for another game. but M&T right next to Camden Yards, they've got a great area where that is at, like about a block from the waterfront. So the area in which this team, I think it's great. I think they find a way to make things happen, and they stay there with that. Now, you say the moving and shifting around again. The Oakland Athletics are making some news again, as not sure where they're going to play their season games in 2025, as supposedly everything is supposed to be getting built starting in 2025 until 2028. Where do you see Oakland going and playing their home games? I've seen some things saying Salt Lake. Is this a possibility, or do they stay in Oakland where the revenues are still, because Oakland is supposed to get close to $70 million for a TV deals if they stay in Oakland?
I don't think that's really going to be enough. And I think this ownership group knows they've burned way too many bridges. Unless you get long stretches of reverse boycotts in Oakland, no matter what happens, they're just done. I think Salt Lake is a better possibility than some of the other options I've seen in and around the Vegas area. And with Salt Lake City further wanting to dip their toe into the sports market, long-time success with the Jazz, Major League Soccer, National Women's Soccer League, wanting to get an NHL team, some form or fashion, it would help Salt Lake City to say, hey, you give us what would be 3 seasons with a team. We'll show you how it's done. So when everything does get finalized, the A's make their move to Vegas. Tampa Bay, you would hope in that time, makes their move either to the Tampa area, to Montreal, to wherever, and you do start looking around at expansion. We want to be top of the list alongside Nashville and others.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Before we move on to a little bit of movement, trades, signings, some heartbreaking ones, and it hurts just to say this. The stolen Jackie Robinson statue was found. That was stolen from Kansas City's park there this morning.
Yeah.
Totally damaged. They are saying it is a not salvageable statue. People cut the statue at its ankles, and they found it burnt this morning in a trash can at Garvey Park, just outside of Kansas City. Heartbreaking.
When I first saw this story, it shames me to say that I wasn't terribly surprised, because with Kansas, as with a lot of the ways that they've been, it's still some things that are less than desirable. And yet that, for him to even have that statue in Wichita was wonderful. Say, hey, we recognize this part of our history. We recognize this part of Jackie Robinson's history, and it was inspiring kids to play. That's really at the heart of the game and how it should be. So when I saw those pictures and say, hey, statue's been cut at its feet, it's missing, I'm like, this isn't going to end well. And now hearing this, all the way to, of all places, Kansas City, which, especially depending which Kansas City, the Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City Monarchs, with the connections to the Negro League, the Negro League Hall of Fame, and everything else, that just adds an extra, to me in particular, hurt. Because I would thought that especially with this, and especially through sports of all things in particular, we were better than this. With everything going on in the world, whether you agree, disagree, political aisle, whatever, you could sit down and talk about games, be civil, have a good time, shake hands, have a beer, whatever. Seeing this
Yeah,
doesn't give me a lot of hope for society in general, and I'm sad. I'm
I
sad.
1,000%. Remind me, I want to share a story with you off air that revolves around this a little bit. Same thing with
Sure.
that. So, um, let's move on a little bit. Some injury update. The World Series MVP, Texas Rangers shortstop Corey Seager, to miss a large amount of spring training, if not the entire spring training, with a sports hernia repair surgery that took place today. Which, dang, I'd love to have my hernia fixed, but I guess I don't make enough money. Um, could he be ready for opening day? And with that being said, opening day, March 28th. We're only 58 days away from opening day. Spring training is right at, I believe I counted 22 days away. So spring training is right here. Do they rush him back, or does the Texas Rangers take a little bit longer and make sure he's 100%?
Absolutely, they take longer because you're talking almost bang on 2 months. And having my brother who's dealing with a little bit of a hernia, it's no fun. Recovery is no fun. The fact that if he's missing spring training anyway, what would be the point of getting him right into the action? It's going to be a slow start. And as we've noticed, those first 10, 15, 20 games as you're going through crazy weather in April, teams starting to figure themselves out. It's not that it's worthless. Every game and every win matters. But if you have that much time to catch up, it's better having a healthier Corey Seager going through a slow start a little bit later to catch fire later in the season and settle in when it matters even more. So, Rangers, they're going to get their accolades and they're really going to take their time. Definitely going to take their time.
Couple big moves over the last couple of days. One that happened this afternoon. Not shocked with. I think this might be a good fit for this ball club. Justin Turner on his way to Toronto to play for the Blue Jays. 1-year deal, $13 million.
Veteran championship experience for a team that's knowing that they're in the grinder that is the AL East, knowing that they've had times when they've been getting closer and closer. They've got a good young core, adding an extra piece. I can't stand Justin Turner. I want to beat him relentlessly on the field, but for the Blue Jays, it works. Doesn't work
Yeah,
for me, but it works for them.
I don't know who is more excited or upset. We'll go with that lead in. Randy is losing an outfielder to a friend of the show, and on most of the show, Alicia, Alicia and the LA Angels picking up Aaron Hicks. Can you imagine what this outfield's going to look like with Aaron Hicks and Mike Trout in that? But with that being said, Hicks is still going to get his $19 million from New York with everything moving on. Good move for the Angels.
Good move. I going with a pretty good replacement and also someone that you can rely on a little bit if the unfortunate happens with further injuries with Trout, or if you have someone that you can pair better with Trout, not just in the outfield, but good spots in the lineup. I like it. They're starting the process post Otani. This is a good first step in that.
Yeah, and for me, I'm a happy guy here today. In the last couple of days, let's talk about all the moves that the Mariners made. It has been crazy today. They do make a move for a utility player, and that's Samad Taylor out of from Kansas City for a player to be named later or cash. Love seeing that in that, but the bigger one is the Mariners land Jorge Polanco in a 5-person trade. Minnesota gets prospect Gabriel Gonzalez, reliever Justin Topa, Anthony Galafani, the starting pitcher, never could say his name whatsoever, and a minor league pitcher, Darren Brown. Jorge Polanco, this adds to this starting lineup. Let me say these names for a minute. Jorge Polanco, Julio Rodriguez, J.P. Crawford, Cal Raleigh, Ty France, and then the two other offseason moves, Mitch Garver and Mitch Haniger. Could this team finally get into the playoffs and make a run in the playoffs?
Given the state of the AL West, I'm going to give you a nugget of hope and say yes. If we have Texas being what they are, Houston being on a bit of a downturn, which everybody loves, I think Seattle, with that perfect balance, a little bit of power in your key spots, middle of the lineup, but you've got average all around, especially going at lead off. Y'all could be dangerous. Just dangerous enough to make that field. I don't know how much noise y'all can make there, but if you go into the wild card round and something like that, if everything goes well through the season, I wouldn't want to play Seattle in a best of 3. I wouldn't. Best of 5, however, hate to break it to you, I like my chances better.
100%. All right, couple more things in the Major League Baseball, and then we're gonna go a little different direction than what Randy likes to go. We're gonna go that way because he's not here tonight. We're in charge, right? Some sad news, and one of the premier managers that I loved watching coach. Jimmy Williams passed away at the age of 80. Jimmy Williams was manager of the year for the Boston Red Sox in 1999. Ended up winning 910 games in what was it, 12 years of manager, where he managed from 1986 to 2004, with a few years off in Boston. 5 years with Boston. I think that's where he was most known. Also in Houston, 3 years in Houston, and then starting his career 4 years in Toronto. So thoughts and prayers go out to Jimmy Williams and his family with the passing of a great manager.
A great
All
manager.
right.
Yeah, one of those steady hands that you always saw, especially with those teams. Always sad. May he rest in peace.
He was one of those guys, and I looked at and I loved seeing the stat. How many times do you think Jimmy Williams got ejected in 12 seasons?
See, I want to go with one of two extremes. I'm thinking more Bobby Cox or more Tranquil. I know it's got to be one or the other. I'm going to go on the lower end, and you're probably going to laugh and say this, and I may pick wrong. I'd say maybe 12 once a season.
Not quite. He was a little bit higher than that. Not Bobby Cox version or Lou Piniella version or Terry Francona, that version. But 33 times. So basically
Okay.
three times a year. But and,
Yeah.
that's how he's just kind of one of those calm, cool, collected kind of guys, and he did pass away down in the Tampa Bay area. So thoughts and prayers are with them. So with that being said, one last one, kind of exciting. I know it's coming up. The release of Major League Baseball, the show 24, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. on the cover. Are you shocked?
Not entirely, because if it was going to be anyone other than the likes of Otani or someone like that, again, Guerrero really coming into his own in the last couple of seasons, especially this season, living up to his dad's name, little bit of the flair, celebration, along with the power, really taking the next generation of the Guerrero family. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. I like it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because I need to catch up and get a new one. We'll see. So, all right, we're down to about 20 minutes, but we're gonna do and shift to those sports that don't get enough coverage. And you and I, we're both golf guys. We love golf. Let's talk a little live. We've got another guy that has jumped ship and is now joining with John Rahm and Terrell Hatton. I was shocked to see this name leaving PGA to go to John Rahm's team. Were you shocked?
Ah, no, I wasn't. Terrell, bienvenidos a Vallacoba en Mexico y bienvenidos a Live Golf. These are the kinds of names that, even with Live lower TV profile still, I'll be tuning to them on the CW. The fact that it's not just the money. Granted, with some of the numbers coming out, the money helps, but it's like, hey, you get a completely different atmosphere. You get just as many great fans at great events, everything else. It's a definitely, even with the changes to the Live Tour schedule this year, a few extra events, lighter schedule, more consistent. You have the extra time, and you get to go and ball out, and you're getting more and more talent. Up until the merge, and I'm going to say this because there's still deals going behind the scenes. Monahan, do the right thing. You know you should. Up until the merge, you're going to see a potential acceleration in these moves because 2024, regardless, is going to be the last year of golf with this. I'm not even going to call it a schism or anything else as we know it. Anything that gets cemented will be in place for 2025. And the more guys that you can get to the Live Tour and the more they play the Live Tour, they like it, they're going to advocate for the Live Golf Tour to survive. And I think it should. But I get it. I'm biased, so I understand. But I'm just saying it's there.
With that being said, and with those two leaving today about 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 your time, there was an article that came out from Rory McIlroy, really not defaming or anything about live golfers, of guys that were on the live tour wanting to come back, and he is kind of welcoming them back home. Can we see a group of these guys now that Rahm and Hatton are now going over, that Live loses a few of these guys and they want to get back on the PGA? Do you think the PGA does anything to these guys?
I don't think the PGA is going to do a lot. And I'm going to caveat this by saying if the merge falls through, if the merger falls through, McIlroy was really the big voice and that carried a lot of weight. And I noticed with the golf league, his venture with Tiger Woods, not really getting off to the best of starts even before their first season. I think if something really doesn't happen with that and or this merger falls through, knowing how much Rory has softened, that's going to see the rest of the PGA board and everyone else soften up too. Because if he, vocal defender of the PGA, extremely vocal anti-live, and I can understand as something as you would describe as more of a golf purist, his views. I respect it. But if he's coming and turning around and saying, hey, these guys are playing too, they're doing the best for their careers and everything else, I understand a bit more now. I get their reasons why. And as I mentioned previously, he's coming around and doing a 180. That's going to be a big look in the PGA's eyes. And that's also handing Liv and the PIF and everyone on that side even more leverage to get this merger done. And don't be surprised that if it does go through, I'm not saying that Rory joins right away, but as he winds down with everything on the PGA Tour, gets a little older in a few years' time, there's more possibility that he jumps ship and plays to live either in this incarnation or whatever comes next. It could happen.
Well, with that being said, also you look at Live, they've expanded a little bit just because of these guys coming in. There's now 13 teams with this group. They open up tournament this weekend, starting on Friday in I believe it's Mexico.
Yep.
Yep, Mexico at El Camaleon Golf Course, and then the next weekend they're go figure. Is it a ploy? I want your opinion on it. Was this a big move by Liv? Liv has a golf tournament in Las Vegas, February 8th through the 10th. So we're talking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you got the Super Bowl on Sunday. Strategic by Liv?
Yes. 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 Because if you think about it, all of the sports that the PIF has invested in, soccer, Formula One, they go big and they know big events. So they're saying, hey, you like to golf. You're going to be in town for the week for the Super Bowl. Get a little extra. We're right here. We got a tournament. Prices are good. Wonderful fan experience. Music. Everything blends in. Vegas, baby, come on. Is the PGA giving you that? No. They only give you that in Phoenix at the Waste Management Open. Come on. Right here. Right here. And I love it. I am here for it. Now, if certain people were to make similar investments in, I don't know, Fling Golf that has been broadcast on ESPN before, and if you were looking for someone up and coming who I don't know, may be starting to try out Fling Golf for the first time this coming weekend, got a little bit of charisma and anything else, and you decide to add a little flair in that professionalism, there are people who would not object to it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
With that being said, we look at the tournaments that they have 12 tournaments this year scheduled on the Live Tour. I believe 4 of them are in the United States. We've got Las Vegas next week, Miami. I want to say it's the week prior to the Masters, if I'm not mistaken. With that one, Houston and Nashville. Or no, 5 of them. Then I forgot about Greenbrier. So they have 5 of their 12 that are in the United States. Do we see them add more if this deal goes through?
I don't know if they're going to necessarily add more. I think they're going to strike a good balance. They're going to see the best of the PGA Tour events, their top ones to fit within the calendar. They will stay, obviously work around the majors, and then you would see Live kind of fill in those gaps in between. I think 12 is a good number, especially with the team championship at the end of the season. Beyond that, I wouldn't really go past 14, and anything past 16 would just be ridiculous. It kind of somewhat defeats the purpose, but they're close to that sweet spot. And With how they do it, how the tournaments are set up, it's just about right. You're striking that chord.
Yeah. And with that being said, I did look it up. Live is in Miami April 5th through the 7th. And then the following week, they'll just make the fairly short trip up to Augusta National and play the
Hmm.
Masters on April 11th through the 14th. And so, uh, another big one this weekend, the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It's always a huge tournament in Pebble Beach. That one, that's about the time I start really watching golf. And then you got the Phoenix Open coming the week after. Ah, why do they do that with the Super Bowl? And you got to fight on which one you're going to watch.
I mean, especially in my case, there's always a dual screen. I have learned two screens in your room are your friend.
All the time, 100%. So I'm looking forward to this new season, how things plan out. Hope the merger goes through. I miss watching a lot of those athletes coming through, but looking forward to seeing the Ustasian, the Mark Leishman, those guys, John Rahm, huge John Rahm fan. I hope to get them back in that. And with that being said, you and Randy, I think, talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we're just over, I believe, 2 months from the start of the merged XFL and USFL. The UFL is slated to start on March 30th, sir. 10-game season. You can catch all that action on ABC, ESPN, Fox, and FS1. You got a horse in the show yet, or are you just excited to see spring football?
I, I was leaning towards the old bandits in the USFL. Kind of sad that they moved to Memphis, but honored that they went ahead and kept the Showboats name. I'm not going to have an individual team in the race just yet. This year, maybe St. Louis, but honestly, I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad that they kept it. I'm glad that it's working and things are ironed out, but I'm going to say this 8 teams for right now. You've got some great expansion candidates a few years down the road now that everything's settled. If the Jacksonville Bulls were to wander their way back into the UFL, I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no.
I listen. I'm the same way. I miss. I got into watching arena football. Traveling 2 hours, go up to Spokane, watch the Shock play, and then they kind of disappeared again. Looking for that. Got to find something to, that's got a counterpart with the NFL and all that.
And there's a bit of good news that you mentioned the Arena Football League. There's been bubblings. There's a lot of stuff. There's a schedule out. Strong possibility that they do commit and AFL 3.0 begins in 2024. I've had my eye on a couple of the indoor leagues that are going on, and I'm like, there's a couple that I'm rooting to succeed. If anybody knows anything and any updates on the Arena League with Commissioner, former NFL great Tim Brown, hook me up. Give me some updates. You may see me cheering on and mentioning teams like the Waterloo Woo. Don't worry too much.
With that being said, also you talked about 8 teams, so let's look at some of the names of the teams. So they're going to do two conferences. You'll have the
Mm-hmm.
USFL conference, which I really like,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got the XFL. Only thing I dislike about all of these is the farthest west you go is San Antonio and Houston. I mean, you don't get anything out on the West Coast yet. Maybe expansion. I love what The Rock said, what Dwayne Johnson said. Let me rephrase. Dwayne Johnson said, "This is a good spring tryout. Let's get you ready. Can you make that jump back up into the NFL?" I like and I love the idea of that being said of let's try this out and get it to be a show for these guys to make the jump back up into a big professional league. And that being said, so let's look at USFL. You've got the Birmingham Stallions, coached by Skip Holtz. Now, I believe that is son of legendary coach Lou Holtz. Houston, the
Mm-hmm.
Roughnecks, coached by Curtis Johnson. Memphis Showboats, coached by John DeFilippio. Michigan Panthers by Mr. Mike Nolan, guy you recognize the name. Great coach there. On the XFL side, you got the Arlington Renegades, coached by one of the greatest coaches of college coaches of all times, Bob Stoops. DC Defenders, Reggie Barlow. An icon, San Antonio Brahmas, Wade Phillips. Great name.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say football in Houston without Wade Phillips. And then St. Louis Blackhawks coach Anthony Becht. If I jump on, I've got to go with one of those coaches that are set and one of those guys that is been a proven coach. I would be following the Brahmas if it was me.
Now, with how the Brahmas kind of underachieved in the last season of the XFL, knowing that they had a little bit of hope at the end, making the change to Wade Phillips, I think it's a good move. And I honestly think if you're telling me to get early predictions right now on the XFL side, an Arlington San Antonio Conference Championship game, I can't really object. Now, granted, you still have that model of having all of the practices jointly in San Antonio before the teams go out to their home games. So that's going to add a little bit of extra intrigue following that from the XFL model instead of the USFL model. But it also benefit the USFL teams, those that stayed, Birmingham, your Memphis and Michigan, all of them getting just their teams in their home markets. It's a great foundation. And again, early predictions on the USFL side. Birmingham's a two-time champs for a reason. I'd be going with the Stallions there.
Yeah, lots to be excited for with this coming out and starting up on and the end of March and be right about the time where the draft is about ready to take place. And so really excited to see what goes on there. Got just a couple more minutes. Let's hit one of our favorite times of the year. Sir, we're only 37 days removed from one of our favorite times of year, and that is the kickoff to the Aussie Rules Football League.
You are looking at a potential top 8, and I'm going to say we're Smokies for the Granny. People are going to hate me on the Discord. I've seen the way we're going. I've seen our moves. Bevo stepping aside. We got great coaches, great youngsters. I got some hope. I've got some hope. Now check back with me in a couple of months and everything may have just completely gone upside down. But for right now, I have hope. I'm loving what we're seeing from preseason.
Yeah, so yeah, you look at the schedule. The first game is March 7th. It's Sydney against Melbourne. And then the bulk of everything starts on the 14th. Hawthorne will be on the road at Essendon. Geelong at home hosting St. Kilda. And your first game, sir, against those Melbourne players, they're on the 16th. Tough game for you to start out the season.
The league hates us. I get the league hates us. They've done this to us again, but it won't matter. Melbourne's got their own drama going on with some of their players, and finally, they're beatable. We'll get a win. Kudos to the league for going with the split round concept. I'm digging it, kind of little whet the appetite for everybody. But week 1, we're in a good place. Start off with a good performance, get a win, and then we'll see how the other 22 games go after that. Mm.
Yeah. Again, it's a long season. If you don't follow Aussie Rules Football, jump on, get on their YouTube page, watch some of the games from last year. Do your research. I loved it. I jumped on with one team, following the Cats 3 years ago, and by far, I love sitting up watching games, recorded games, and going back and watching it. It is an unbelievable sport. And we've preached it. You've preached it. Randy's preached it. We all follow it. Jump on, watch the AFL, and do that. All right, sir. One of my favorite times of the year just happened this last weekend. Besides Golden Throne, besides the AFC Championship, it was Royal Rumble this past weekend. Did you watch, sir?
I did not. Other things going on. I heard a lot of commentary. Some of my favorite YouTubers, a couple of other groups that I've been kind of keeping tabs on the fringes. So I was in the loop.
With that being said, we'll just run over the winners really quick. Tell me if you were shocked or not. Lots of things going on. The first match was the women's Royal Rumble, and came down to uh, three athletes that was very shocking. Let's go four. We can't forget Bianca Belair, who was the fourth out, but came down to Bailey winning that over Liv Morgan and Jade Cargill. First action as a WWE wrestler. I was excited to see these four women at the final match, final
I
part of the
mean,
match. I should.
if you look at it, it was kind of leaning that way. You always want to have the debutantes at big events to do well. So this fits in WWE's mold. So a very good Bailey prevailing for that one. So that was a good win. Everyone loved it. So I'm good with that one.
The Universal Championship, Roman Reigns retains. Not shocked. I don't think they want to change the story quite yet with the whole Rock thing possibly coming. I think we see the Rock and him at Perth in Australia. I could be wrong, but he does knock off LA Knight, Randy Orton, and AJ Styles.
It's all about the record. And it's does he get the record eventually or a longest run as champion? How will that play over? Does he wind up losing it so close in spectacular fashion? There's a few ways that this can go, but for Royal Rumble like this, it's like this would have been the worst way for him to drop the belt. So that's good with me.
100%. Uh, Not a big fan. I'm not a fan like my wife is a fan of this person. She loves Logan Paul. In the US Championship, Logan Paul retains his title. I didn't think they were going to drop either one of the titles in the four matches, but kind of shocked to see Kevin Owens take the brass knuckles in his hand after the guy left them there for him. So, and take him from Logan. So,
Sometimes you need an extra heel or two, and I get it. Sometimes you don't. You figure maybe this could be a turn with Logan Paul. I don't entirely know. But this is going to be a moment that I'm sure is going to be referenced. Maybe in Perth, somewhere else. Keep that in mind, especially with what's going to be happening on Netflix. Just a special alone for that and bringing up this moment. So keep that in the memory banks.
you did hit on it. Netflix is now going to pick up what was it, 10 years, if I remember right? 10-year
10
deal.
years with the option to make it 20.
Yeah, as they will host the longest running television program, Monday Night Raw, is leaving the USA Network. So, and last but not least, men's Royal Rumble, Cody Rhodes wins back-to-back years, first to do it since Stone Cold Steve Austin in the late 90s. also Shawn Michaels in that conversation piece. Not really shocked with that one. I was excited to see him and CM Punk do it towards the end.
And you think with everything, especially with how people are treating CM Punk and what's going on with him, seeing Cody take it like over him, that was a good one. That was a good one.
So that's going to do it. We've been on 2 hours. It was long. I was stressing we weren't going to have enough to talk about, but lots of things going on. Next week we look forward to that. It's probably going to be a Monday show, as both Randy and I do have basketball on Tuesday. I want to thank you. You filled in this week for Randy, last week for me. I also want to thank Robert Taylor filling in for me. As you notice, my name, the best Robert, is back, as he was promoted as being the better Robert. Thank him for filling in for me the last 2 weeks, as we have been so busy with that. But next week we will have our NFL preview, our Super Bowl picks. We'll try to get you and Robert on and try to get our picks in. We look ahead like I did. We dabbled a little bit in Major League Baseball. We're down to about 20 days, 22 days to spring training. So excited for that. And hopefully we have a little bit better picture of some of the Idaho sports locally, of where we are going for playoffs. So again, thank you to Eric Watkins for filling in. For myself, you've been watching the R&R Sports Report live, and we will see you back next week.